Well, today we're adding another lady gnome to our gnome family. Stay tuned and see how fun and easy this project is. Alright, so I wanted to start by showing you the pieces all on the Cricut mat. I just cut these with my Cricut. Now, one thing to say, to do the videos, I always take everything off the mat and I glue it together. I set it on my table and on my work tile and I glue it together. If I'm doing a project like this on my own, as in not for a video, I would sit here, I would take off these 4 pieces and I'd glue them together and I'd set them to the side. Then I'd take off these 3 and I'd glue them together and I'd set them to the side. It is so much easier if you can leave these pieces intact on your mat until you're ready to glue that set, because I do group them by piece. So we have the 4 back or body pieces. We have the back for the sunglasses and the frames for the sunglasses. We have the nose pieces. We have 6 pieces to make 2 feet. We have 6 pieces to make 2 hands, keeping in mind that there's right and left. So this one and this one and this one are a stack. This one, and this one are a stack. We have the braids to make the 2 braids. We have 6 wedges to go on our beach ball. They'll each be painted differently. I do have a little circle here for the center. If you don't want, if something happens to yours, or you're cutting by hand and you don't want to cut it by hand, this is 1/8 of an inch. So if you have 1/8 of an inch circle punch, you can use that. These are the back of the beach balls, and these are the pieces for the hat. So I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to put all of these pieces off the mat onto my tray. I'm going to get my glue ready, and we can start gluing, and I'll talk to you about where to get the pattern and the rules and that kind of thing. So I'll be right back. All right, everything is off the mat and here in its little piles, and I put the little tiny 1/8 inch round punch piece or round circle piece and the 6 wedges for the beach ball. They don't need to be glued. They're not going to be glued yet, so they are going to go off to the side so that I know where they are when I go to paint them, because the first step with them will be to paint them. So like you saw, everything else, there's 3 of each one, except there's 3 layers on each piece, except for the back, which is 4. I have found over time that that extra 4th layer on this backing is just, it's nice. It makes everything stay together a little bit better. It makes it hold up a little better. It makes the whole gnome a little bit stronger. So you may be saying, well, where do I get this pattern? And do I have to have a Cricut? All right, the pattern is free. The download link will be in the blog post that goes with this video, which is linked below in the description box. Simply go to the blog, go to the link will be in one of the first few paragraphs on the blog post. Follow that link to Google Drive and download the zipped file that will have the PNG to use with your Cricut, a text file that will talk to you about what size it will need to be sized to in your Cricut, because I find that when I bring in a PNG file into my Cricut, it resizes it to some random size, usually way bigger than I want for miniature. So you follow the directions on there, and I also give a few tips and tricks that I have learned over the years of doing these on the Cricut. If you don't have a Cricut, or you just don't want to use a cutting machine, you can also use that on like a Silhouette or whatever. Any electronic cutting machine that will use a PNG file, you can use it on. I know there are a few out there that don't take an SVG. That's why I do mine in a PNG, because I know there are a few machines that a SVG file doesn't work quite right with. I have a friend that has one of those. If you don't want to use an electronic cutting machine and you want to use your scissors, there's also a PDF file to download that will allow you to hand cut this from cardstock. Now, the cardstock we are using, I'm using a medium weight or heavier, not a super heavy, but a medium weight cardstock. I think it's around 60 pounds or so, 60, 65, something like that. I use white and then I paint all the pieces for a couple of reasons. Number one, I only have to have white paper on hand, not a whole bunch of different colors and have a whole bunch of different, setting things to cut out. Secondly, I find that painted pieces hold their color much better when I paint with a good acrylic paint, will hold their color and not fade nearly as much as some of the colored cardstocks will. So that's why I do it that way. Now, as far as using this pattern, you can use the pattern as many times as you want. You can make as many gnomes as you want. You can sell the gnomes. You can give the gnomes away. You can do whatever you want with the finished gnomes. I just ask that you don't sell or give away my pattern that I've worked very hard to make and spent a lot of time and effort coming up with the design and coming up with how to create things like a beach ball on my design program, on my graphics program. I'm all self-taught, so it takes me a while to do that some days, but it's very satisfying when I do figure it out. And I really want to keep being able to offer these to you guys, so I really ask that you just follow my rules. If somebody else wants to make the pattern, send them over to the video, send them to the blog post. That is the only compensation I get for the hours I spend designing my programs, is when you guys look at the video or click on the blog post. That's it. All right, I am going to turn the camera off. I'm going to finish gluing these together. I'm then going to put a weight down over them. Usually what I do is I take this little ruler I have that I keep on my desk. It's a good size. I put this directly on top of the pieces. I put something slightly heavy on, usually my Bluetooth speaker, and let these dry at least most of the way under the weight. Because if they are most of the way dry before I take that off, they don't warp. If I let these dry, sometimes the bigger pieces will warp or some edges will come up. That just helps everything to stick together. So I will be back when I have all this glued, and the glue needs to be all the way dry before we do our next step, which is to put this all onto some tape so that we can start our painting process. So I'll see you when I'm ready to paint. All right, I allowed the glue to dry overnight so that these are completely dry. You need to do that. This glue needs to be dry because if the paper is still damp on the back and you put it onto the painter's tape or masking tape, you run a bigger risk of the tape pulling off the back layer of paper. You get less damage if the paper is completely dry. I have grouped my pieces by color. First, I put 2 pieces of tape down on my work surface. I put a piece of wide masking tape. It's taped down on both ends, and it's sticky side up. Same situation here, but with washi tape. These pieces are all a single layer. If you stick them on here, they tend to tear. Washi tape is a little less sticky, and since these are a little more delicate, it works much better. These are grouped by color. Each one of these pieces will be a different color, and you'll see that when I come back. I have, now this time because it's summer, our lady gnome, or a gnomess, is just like last summer when I did the gnome, she's going to be wearing flip-flops or sandals. So her feet, her nose, and her hands are both here, and I made sure I had a left and a right hand. They'll be flesh color. I have the hat, it will be one color. I have the sunglasses, they'll be a color. I have the lens for the sunglasses, and I'm going to paint those silver, just so it looks like they're reflective. The hair, and then this time, this is the piece we're going to build the beach ball on. I've decided to paint at least the outside edge of it the same color as her dress. That way it will blend in better, and I won't have to paint the sides, the 6 individual colors. So I'll paint the first couple on camera so you can see. I mean, we're just painting. It's no big deal. We'll come back. We'll start assembling some pieces and put some details on the hat. I am going to put some details on there. So I have a flesh color. And you can use a fairly small brush. You do want to, excuse me, you do want to try to get around the edges so that you don't have a white edge on your pieces. The paint that comes off onto the tape, like here I'm going around it, so I've got a skin of paint around the piece on the tape. That generally I find will stick with the tape, and it peels it off and leaves a nice edge. If you don't have it, when I first started doing these, I tried to make sure I had a part of each piece off the tape to make it easier to pull off. And I have found since that this works better to have them completely on the tape if possible. That way when I pop them up with my pointy tool, I don't have all that tape, all that paint that's run out around the edges to clean up. So then these will need to dry. And don't worry about what colors I'm using here. I'm going to have pictures of each piece, each color set on the blog post with the paint jar so you can see exactly what color I used rather than going over all the colors, because I'm not going to be doing all the colors on camera. All right, let's see, what color did I have? Trying to remember what color I decided for each thing. The hat I know is going to be this really pale yellow. The hat is supposed to be like a little sun hat. That one's going to be slightly bigger. We are going to put some details on it. It's probably the only piece that will have many details. So I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to finish painting this, and then I'm going to let this paint dry before we start gluing, because if I start gluing while the paint is still got any dampness to it, I find it reactivates the paint and it just gets really, really messy. So I will be back when the paint is dry. All right, my paint is dried and I'm going to move this part away to the side. That way I can come back and work on that and when my this paint's all dry, because we're going to do some decorative painting on the hat. So I did start this once with some yellow and I decided it wasn't dark enough. I want something a little darker. In fact, I'm going to use the pink that I used on her dress instead of the yellow that I was going to use. And what I'm going to attempt to do is paint the brim of the hat. And I'll probably have to do a second coat on this. I want it to have a little mark there. Off camera, I will probably add a little bit more. That off the side. Now we're going to add some dots to the hat. I'm going to start, since I've got this here, and I've got a dotting tool. Let's see if this is big enough to, come on. No, it's not. Then let's just use the handle of this brush. I've already got it here. There we go. Generally, there's enough paint in the lid to get quite a few dots. That's that. Let's also get the purple. This is the purple I used on the beach ball. And there will be pictures of each of these items with the paint that I used for each step so that you can see what I used and you can get whatever you have that's closest to those colors. You don't need to use the same colors as I do though. Make this the way you want it. What colors do you think would go best in your dollhouse? Why did I do that? Oh, there's probably enough on my thumb. There. Oh, I've got blue paint all over myself. All right, I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to go get cleaned up. I'm going to come back and we can start putting the beach ball together. All right, two parts of this need to be pre-glued before we go on, and that is our sunglasses and our beach ball. And then after I do the sunglasses, I will come back off camera and put some more of the matching paint, this plum color, around the outside edge of the sunglasses. But these should line up just fine. Why are my hands shaking? These should line up really well because they are basically the same piece, just the glasses have the holes cut out for the lenses. All right, now wipe all this stuff off my fingers. I managed to stick my finger right on the dots of the hat. All right, now I am going to take these off, kind of make sure I have no big globs of paint sticking off the sides. Now you could do your beach ball, of course, any color you want. I really was at a loss for what color to do this. So this is what I came up with. Now don't lose your tape until you get that little dot off there. Now, in theory, if everything cut correctly, this is going to fit perfectly. One side of the little triangle is rounded, so of course you do need to make sure you get that to the edge. I have blue paint all over myself. Thought I got more of that off of myself than I did. Now there's a little bit of paint sticking off the edge there. I'm obviously going to have to do a little bit of shifting because all right, I need to trim this little orange one just a tiny bit. I would say that it cut just a little bit off. And that happens. And don't worry about the center because as long as you've got no more than 1/8 of an inch or so there. Come on. There we go. All right, let me get my piece of pasta. The old raw spaghetti trick. And that can go back to my tape to dry. When this paint and glue have dried, I will come back and we can start assembling the gnome. All right, so my paint is dry and I've laid down the 2 hair braids and I made them so they're about the width of the outside edge. Lines up approximately with this part of this. It doesn't have to be exact, just in that general size range. Now we're going to glue the hat onto the hair. I like to put these here because then I can get them lined up the way I want them. They don't wander around on my tray. I've got glue off to the side, and I'm just using tacky glue for everything. Put that there. I kind of fixed the dots a little bit that I had messed up. I decided not to add a second coat of glue to the, or paint to the hat brim. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Now, I like to put the nose on at the same time because you can see there's just a little bit of glue here. The nose is designed to fit up in that little opening, that little arch on the hat. And if that glue was allowed to dry before I snug this up in there, it's possible that that would block the nose from fitting into the hat. Now this part needs to set up just a little bit, just enough so that when I come back and add that to this, there's glue on my finger. When I add this to this, I won't move things around. So I'm going to let this glue sit for probably 10-15 minutes while I go do something else. And when I feel it's set up enough, I'll come back, we'll add more pieces to our body. All right, the glue on her has not dried, but it's set up enough that I'm comfortable gluing it on. First, though, I am going to put on our feet. Now, we will need to paint her sandals on, but I find that's easier once the feet are on the bottom of the body and the glue has set up a bit. And that won't be very much paint, so it will be fine. It won't take long to dry. And the feet are still on the tape, so I need to get them off. Now the feet are designed to line up here on the bottom of the body. Whoops, I'm trying to stay under camera. All right, that'll work. Now, there's only the hat and the hair and everything is only going to touch the body in a couple of places. The back of the hair will touch, and then it will touch hopefully right up there. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue there. And then a little bit of glue here. And that's really all the glue we need, because the rest of it's not going to touch. And then since I want this to get, now try to get the head on straight and centered. That's one of my biggest challenges. I am going to let this glue set up for a little bit before I come back and put the beach ball, sunglasses, and the two hands on, because I've got quite a few pieces to get together here. So I'm going to let this glue set, again, probably only about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll come back and we can add the last pieces on, and at that point in time, we can also paint the little sandals on. So I'll be back in a minute. All right, our glue is set up enough to go ahead and put our beach ball on. And I'm going to put it on right here. And the only places it is touching is right here on the end of her braids and then on the very bottom of the beach ball. And that's okay. And then I think I'll do it that way. My glue is nice and thick because it's been sitting here for a little bit. Now we've got two hands. Make sure that you know which is the right and which is the left. Put a dot of glue here. And try not to use too much glue at this stage so you don't have to wait quite as long for it to dry before you put the clear finish on. Now the little hands do have a little thumb at the top, so that way you can see which way they go. Now her sunglasses are going to go right here on her hat. All right, then we've got her little feet, and we need to put some sandals on her. So I'm going to use the purple. This is the same color I used for her sunglasses and for the dot in the center of the beach ball. So I'm going to first hold on to this and just make a line across the bottom. And if that's all you want to do, that's all you have to do. You don't have to do the rest. I'm going to put a little V on here. So it kind of looks like her little sandal. Now that paint and glue will need to dry so that the paint won't smear, and also so that the glue will actually turn clear underneath the clear finish. So I'm going to let this dry for a little bit, and then I'll come back. We'll put a coat of Mod Podge on it, and then once that's dry, we can look at this on the front of the dollhouse. All right, now that my glue and the paint in here are completely dry, I have some satin Mod Podge. I'm going to do 2 steps here really quick. Off camera, I'm going to go ahead and paint the back of this with the satin Mod Podge also, because we want to make sure that the back is sealed also. These just hold up so much better if you do that. Now, try not to get too thick of a coat on, because this does tend to remain sticky if it's too thick. And I do want to get most of the satin out of those sunglasses lenses, because I have my gloss Mod Podge, and I have one of these little micro brushes. And if this remains tacky in here, remains a little bit sticky, I'll come back and top that with clear nail polish at a later time. But I'm going to put the gloss Mod Podge in there, and hopefully I'll be able to get by with just that. But I like to make the lenses of the sunglasses just a little bit glossy. That way it makes them look a little nicer. So once this has dried completely, or dried so it's clear, I will move it over to the front porch of the beachside bungalow, and we can take a look at it next to last year's beach gnome. So I'll see you there in a minute. And there she is on the front porch, along with Mr. Gnome from last year and some of our other things we've made in the past. I hope you enjoyed today's project. Be sure and hop over to the blog post. Check out the pictures over there, and that's where you'll find the link to make your own little gnome. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure and hit the like button. Leave me a comment. What kinds of things would you like to see in future tutorials? If you enjoy my content and haven't subscribed, I encourage you, hit that subscription button and the notification bell so you know when I put up a new video. Thank you very much for watching today, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.